Buying your first home is really exciting and, of course, terrifying at the same time. And most first time home buyers don't fail because of money, they fail because of confusion. And if you're looking to buy a house and you're feeling overwhelmed, this episode is for you. Hi, I'm Adam Marshall, and welcome to Ask the Marshall. Thanks so much for joining. This is where every week I touch base and give you market updates and updates in every segment of the market with no fluff, no BS, just straight answers. So, in this one here, when we're looking to go ahead and purchase your first house, it's a really big deal. It's a really big deal. And so, this segment today is not about hype, it's not about pressure. This is just about bringing clarity and confidence to your process and helping you understand where you need to be, where you are, what's happening in the market, and the benefits of owning versus renting. So, buying your first house, of course, is a process. It's not the big leap. It's not something that you want to do blindly. It's something you want to do when you're fully informed and you know what your options are. And many first-time buyers, when you're into the marketplace and you're looking, there's many fears. The major fear for a lot of people, especially in a market like today, is a lot of buyers are afraid of overpaying. They don't want to pay too much for a house and regret it later on. A lot of buyers, there's a strong fear of rejection. They don't want to go ahead and purchase a house or make an offer on a house and make the seller angry, disappoint the seller, disappoint anyone else in the process, or make them angry. And along with that is there's a great fear of commitment. A lot of home buyers, if they're still living at home or if they're renting, they haven't had a high level of commitment for financially anyways, in regards to where they live. So that fear of commitment all of a sudden is right near the top when you know you have to sign a mortgage and you're financially obligated for a large sum of money. And of course, the largest one, and what I'm here to help with, is of course is a fear of making a mistake. A lot of buyers just are afraid of the process and afraid of making a mistake at any step. And that's what I'm here for. That's what I'm here to help with. That's what I'm here to guide you with. And of course, over my 23 years of selling real estate, I've helped many first-time home buyers get into the market and successfully navigate the process and start owning their own home and building their wealth. And of course, with many buyers, they start really unsure. They're not too sure of the process, not too sure of what happens. And at the end of it, they become confident, and they're confident homeowners. And it's a great process. It's a wonderful thing. And it's great for me to see. I can tell you, as I've seen many of these families work through the process, it's very gratifying for me. And this system works just great when it's followed closely, when it's followed smoothly. It works really well. So type below if you're renting right now. Okay, I'd like to hear from you. Drop any questions you had before, but below. Type rent if you're renting right now, and type in buy if you're thinking about buying in the next year. I'd like to know who's interested in buying and how many buyers are actively looking and actively searching. Okay. And along with that, comment below, because I'd like to hear what scares you about buying. What scares you most about buying a house? Okay. And for any of you there that would like my first time home buyer kit, of course, DM buyer, and I'll be sure to send that out to you. Make sure you get all the information and you're fully informed about the full process. So, okay, let's talk about the large part of the conversation, and that's renting versus buying. Okay, let's talk about the real math, no emotion. We'll take that out, and let's talk about where the math sits right now today as we speak. So, some common beliefs, of course, with renting and buying is that renting typically feels safer. It usually feels safer to a large segment of the buyers out there, and so that way they don't have to make long-term commitments. They don't have to make a mistake. If they do make a mistake and they don't like where they live, they can get out within a reasonable amount of time, and they're not committed for the long term. And of course, buying feels risky. You're committing to something. You're committing to a mortgage. You're spending a lot of money. There's a lot of zeros. There's a large a lot of finances attached to that. And This risk isn't about ownership, it's just about ignorance, and that's what I want to eliminate here, is to have that open conversation with you, just to know the good, the bad, the ugly, and both sides of the spectrum as I see it, in terms of course, buying versus renting. So let's talk about some average numbers that I've been able to dig up and work out here. So average rent in Brantford right now, based on some online sources, the average rent for anything from a one bedroom to a three bedroom, okay, is approximately $2,290 on average. So that's the base number we're going to work with today. $2,290 is their base number. And right now, our average sale price in Brantford is sitting around $600,000. Okay, I'm not going to get into the weeds about that, but it's around $600,000. So for our first-time home buyer, okay, the average payment could be, with 5% down, at 4% over 25 years. Okay, the average payment, mortgage payment, will be about $2,998.32. Okay, so that's the payment we're going to be working with today, with 5% down. And if the average buyer does put down 20%, because I have a lot of those buyers that I'm working with now, the first-time buyers putting down 20%, at 4% over 25 years, their average payment is going to be somewhere around $2,524.90. So that's the other number we're going to work with as we work through some of these numbers. Okay. Now, comparing those payments and working through them, if our average rent is $2,290, the difference is about $708 per month if you're putting down just 5%. And so, of course, most people are saying, hey, I'd rather save this $700. I'll invest that. I'll pay off debt. I'll do a bunch of other stuff with that. Great options. Very possible. Could be, if you're actually doing that. And that is one portion of this, as one segment of buyers or consumers that I see. A lot will say they're going to do it, but a lot don't. One major item that I'm a fan of when it comes to a mortgage payment is I view it as a forced savings plan. That's how I've always viewed it myself. When my values have gone up, my values have gone down. I've always viewed that as just a forced savings plan. I know that I'm always doing that, because I know, with this specific example, $1,114 of my mortgage payment is going to pay down principal on the home. So one thing you need to know about me, obviously, I'm in the profession, I'm a realtor. But so along with that, I'm obviously, a very strong believer in real estate. I'm a real estate bull, is what I tell everyone. And I'm also an investor. So, but if I know that I'm putting $1,114 a month to pay down my principal, I view that as going into my savings account. And now I know there's naysayers out there. I want to just stop you before you start commenting. I know that you're going to say, yes, but prices are coming down. Yes, but the market's changing. And guess what? The reality is that the market is always changing. The market is always in flux. Okay. And only until recently have we seen the market really increase a huge amount. And then, of course, it's coming down and has softened a lot. We're down to about, say, 30% is the general number that I'm using right now. So I get it. But that really hasn't been the common theme with real estate over the long-term curve. Here in Canada, on average, between 3 and 5% appreciation every year on average is where we've sat. Okay, so I view real estate as a long-term investment. So make no mistake about this. I'm looking at real estate as a long-term investment. Now, what does that mean to me? That means minimum 5 years, ideally 10. Okay, so if you're going to commit to it, we're minimum 5, ideally 10 years. And in my experience, over those time frames, I've been able to work through some of my mortgages. I've been able to pay down the mortgage a good amount of money. And with many of my amortizations, it's been about 50%. I've been able to pay them down. And with that, when I get those terms, end of the 5 or especially the end of the 10, I have a good chunk of built up equity that I can do something with, and I have more options, i.e., once again, my savings. Okay, that's some of the money I can move forward in my next house. And I've helped hundreds and hundreds of families do the exact same thing, work the exact same process. And of course, you have to remember, you got to live somewhere anyways. No matter where you are, you got to live. And so knowing that and understanding that, you're not going to avoid the payment. Okay. Anyone that has kids, anyone who has many financial obligations, you have to live life. You're not going to avoid the payments. You're not going to avoid buying the vehicle. You're not going to avoid all these extra payments that do come up in life. And in my view, rent and of course mortgages are a large part of that. So once we're planning for that, we understand that that is a given. Then you have a choice. Do you want to pay rent to a landlord like me? I love great tenants, by the way. I'm looking for more great tenants. Do you want to go ahead and pay a landlord and put money in his pocket every month, or do you want to put it in your own? And these are some of the fundamental questions and fundamental principles that I think you have to ask yourself, and I think that you have to operate on. So I'm not here to convince you. I just want to talk about, have an open conversation about it, and talk about some pros and cons. So what rent does give you? Well, rent does give you some comfort. It will allow you to live there with any major breakdowns. They're not going to be part of yours. You don't have to worry about that. But what the one big negative that I see is that it gives you zero equity. You're not building any equity in the home over time. So you don't have that. And you're going to have annual rent increases. In most cases, unless you get a landlord that doesn't increase rent, which is pretty rare, but your rent is going to go up every single year, like clockwork. And by the way, if you're one of those renters and you happen to live in a house that was built after 2018, your rent could go up by any amount at any time, annually. So that doesn't make me feel very comfortable. I can tell you that if I own a property, that doesn't make me sleep well at night. Okay. And of course, what the ownership does give you is it gives you stability. You know where you're going to be if you have, depending on your mortgage. But if you're like me, you choose on average a 3 to 5 year term. I know that for the next 3 to 5 years, that's my payment. It's not going to fluctuate. It's not going to change. So it gives me that stability. And like I mentioned before, it gives me that equity build. The pay down on the mortgage, I'm building the equity up in the home. And that's something that I count on for sure. And I plan on building. And it gives me those long-term options. It gives me those long-term options where I can take the built-up equity, I can sell it, I can roll it up into another property, I can move up, move sideways. Or one major benefit is I can take some of the equity out and I can go buy a second home. I can go buy an investment property. I can go buy a cottage. I can go move it into another asset like that will only snowball and only build month in, month out in my favor. So that's how I view that. And this is where the power really is, and where the power is in owning real estate. And when I say it gives me more options, these are the more options that it gives me. Okay. If you have any comments or any questions, please DM me or please post them down below. I'd love to hear from you. Okay. Just drop them down below. Okay. Now, there's some hidden costs in terms of waiting to buy. Some of those hidden costs, of course, there's rising rents. We know that rents, we see it every day. Rents have been going up. Some rents have settled down, but some of the properties that are in high demand, they're still rising or they're holding very firmly. There's lost equity. If the more you wait, you're losing out on the equity built up in your home. Now, right now, I will tell you that interest rates are historically fantastic. And for my examples that I've used here, I'm using about a 4% interest rate, which is about in the mix of where I'm looking at some of my lenders. Sometimes you can get cheaper, some will be a little bit more, but around 4% is where you're going to be for a purchase, or for refinance for that matter. But when you're working through this, the rent is going to go up. So we're locking in our payment. We'd like to keep that consistent, at least for the near term. For 3-5 years, like I say, is the average. You lose it on the equity. Okay, you're not getting the equity build up. You're not paying the house off. You're not going to be able to take that equity and move it into another asset class to have it work for you, work harder for you. You can't pass it on to your kids. One thing I always remember, one thing that I always remind people of when you think about purchasing real estate and investing in real estate in general, my view of that is that when I purchase a piece of real estate, just think about how you can change your grandkids' lives with that. So even if it's just your own home to live in, and you never plan on selling, you keep that forever. Just think about how down the road you can change your grandkids' life with the value that you're building. We look at older countries throughout the world. We look at Europe, and there's many homes that have never changed hands on the open market. They've been in the family name for hundreds of years, and probably for the foreseeable next 100 or so years, it's going to be in the same family name. They just pass it from generation to generation, and people keep on passing it down. I think there's a lot of power in that, and that's how I view my real estate. When I do that, I don't plan on selling. I plan on just taking it, and I'm going to bless my grandkids with it, and in the process, train them to go ahead and to learn how to work within real estate, how to utilize that and leverage all the benefits of that. Once again, I've mentioned some of the leverage, the lost leverage. If you don't purchase, you're losing that leverage. With down the road, you can leverage up and get into a bigger house, a nicer neighborhood, different location, wherever you want to be. Generally, when you buy your first house, it's your first house. It's not your last. So you're going to buy that, and you're going to move up over time, and that's just the process, and that's great. And that's why keeping that house for a great rental is an awesome option. But you can also and leveraging that, or leverage that and move up to a nicer neighborhood, a bigger house, a newer house, whatever the situation may be. And of course, as you're waiting, there's lost confidence. When you see everything going on around you, you see buyers buying, sellers selling, things moving. I think that you become less confident because you become more confused. You're not sure. You get so much information from the news and headlines and friends and family, and everyone's trying to tell you what to do. I think to me, I have to break it down to the basics. What do I value? What are my goals? What do I need to do? And that increases my confidence. Okay. Now, in terms of lifestyle, when you own, you have the ability to personalize the home. You can change it. You can amend it any which way you want. You can put it on the deck, put it in the pool, build a larger garage. You live in the country. You can have some animals. You can do a bunch of different things that you want. And it adds a tremendous amount of stability for you and your family. You know where you're going to be for the next long term, hopefully. And it gives that level of stability where I know some people that they rent and they move on a regular basis, and they move their entire family. And to me, I was born and raised in the same house for my whole life until I bought my own first house. And so I like that stability. I think that stability is important for the family structure. I think it was important for my financial structure. And that's once again how I view that. And for me, there's some predictable housing costs over time. I know what my mortgage payment is going to be. I know what some of my expenses are, my insurance and my taxes. I understand what a lot of these are going to be. So this is this is my comfort zone, and this is what I recommend. All these benefits that I've just briefly mentioned here. Okay, so let me just pose a question to you. Would you rather pay rent for 5 more years, or would you rather own something that's going to grow with you, own something that's going to build an equity, own something that you can make your own something that you can hand down to your children or grandchildren, or improve their lives down the road? Post your comments below. I'd love to hear from you. Love to know what some of your perspective is. Okay. So there's some myths in the marketplace. A lot of buyers think that you need 20% down. That's not true. A lot of buyers think that you need 20% down to purchase your first house or a house, and that's just not true. I can get you into your first house now, a second house for that matter, in many cases, with 5% down. Just 5% down, I can get you into your first home. So calculate that, whatever that may be. You and I can even work the numbers backwards and figure out, what you can afford and what that number would looks like. But for just 5% down, I can get you into an awesome house, a house that you can start to build your own equity and have all these great benefits with. A lot of buyers, also another myth that's out there, is a lot of buyers think that they need perfect credit to buy a house. That's not true either. I've got lots of buyers that I'm working with now, lots of people I'm helping to get refinanced in the home that they're in, and you don't need perfect credit. So, your credit score, ideally, if you're above 640, 650, that's ideal. Okay, I can get you into pretty well any lender and recommend you to any lender that I have, and I know that they can get you a mortgage. But I have some lenders and some buyers that I've been able to get financed through some of the lenders and relationships that I have with lower credit scores than that. Okay, there's a wide range of funding out there, and there's not just one type of person that is out there. Majority of home buyers actually are on the lower end of the spectrum for credit score, but there's a product out there for you. That's very possible, and that's there. And of course, one myth is that a lot of buyers will say, "I know when I'm ready." and that's a myth. I think that you have to look at it and set your goals, and don't wait too long. Don't wait till you necessarily get married. Don't wait till you necessarily have children. Don't wait until that next phase of your life. I think that adds to confusion because there's just a greater financial challenge ahead of you. I think you should jump in right away. That's what I did. So, right, wrong, or indifferent, whatever you may believe, I got my first house as soon as possible. And I've really benefited from that. I can tell you that it's changed my life dramatically. I wouldn't be where I am today financially if it wasn't for that first house and buying it at the time that I did. My only regret that I have is I wish that I bought it sooner. That's the only regret that I had, or that I have. Okay? Go ahead and DM me buyer below, and I'll show you what's actually possible for you in terms of your mortgage payment, your affordability, what some options may be according to some of those criteria that we set. No pressure, of course. But it's nice to investigate and see what's out there, see what some options are. Because without a couple options, without knowing where some of your guidelines and where you need to be between the two yellow lines, that's really going to help you out. Okay. All right, let's talk about where we need to go. Okay, let's talk about our roadmap. So, starting on that, we need to get some financial clarity. We need to know where we're at. We need to know where you're at and what we have to plan for. So, there's two major concepts when you when you start to see how much of a mortgage you can get qualified for. There's a pre-qualification that exists out there. What that is that you would talk to your bank, you talk to your lender, and they will just get some of the minor information from you without producing any formal documents from your bank or your latest taxes or your employer. The pre-qualification is just basically a fill in the blanks type approach and say, hey, here's what you make, here's what you can afford, here's how much of a down payment you have. This is what that looks like in terms of where you'd be in the marketplace. So that's what a pre-qualification is. And then what's better, and where we always want to go, is we want to go for a pre-approval. And the only difference is that with the pre-approval, all those items are verified. And we know that you can get that pre-approval. Okay. Now, some banks don't do pre-approvals like they used to. They do soft pre-approvals. But checking your credit is a must. Making sure your documents that you need and you require are in place. Okay. Some people that are out there, they're looking to get in the market. You may be divorced, you may be separated. Those are important documents that we have to have in place typically to satisfy lenders. Things like that. That's where that real pre-approval comes in. Okay. Once we know those numbers, I want to be able to give you some confidence. I want you to know where you're at and to be able to be comfortable in terms of, hey, do you have that down payment that's required? If not, let's put together a plan to help you get there over the next 6 months, a year, 2 years, 5 years, whatever's possible for you. Okay. And I always find that once we know a lot of these numbers and we can peg a lot of these together, there's obviously no pressure. There's no timeline, but we can stop guessing about where it's going to be. And we know the numbers, and that's going to relieve a lot of your stress. That's going to make the process a lot smoother. They're not going to have anything that you're wondering about, anything that you don't know about. All the numbers and all the information will be set out in front of you and set out before you. Okay. As a first-time buyer, there's a lot of programs, a lot of incentives that are available to you. Okay. Now, this is on an individual basis, but just breezing over a few of them. There are first-time home buyer incentives, and that would be you get land transfer tax deductions. That is the big one that gets used. There's HST, GST reductions or grants that you can receive for that if you're buying a new house. There's a lot of great programs out there. If you're not using the first-time home buyers plan, that's a really good one. I recommend you do that. I can explain it to you more in depth in a later episode, but they're a great program if you don't have that. I encourage you to look into that and get signed up for that, get prepared for that. And you can be gifted a down payment, if you can only save so much. If you have someone that has the ability to gift you the down payment, a friend, a family, a relative, that's another option. And once again, like I said before, we have lots of low down payment options. You don't need that 20% to put down on a house. I can get you into a house with 5% down. So if you can source the down payment from any one of those items that I just mentioned to you, then guess what? I can typically get you into a home as long as you meet some of the other criteria. Okay. Now, when you're looking to choose your first house, I constantly remind people and remind buyers that when you're looking for your first home, it's your first home. It's not your forever home. Okay. And just be comfortable with that. And that's okay. I think that's good. I think that's good because I think it gives you more options. You just want to get into a house. You want to start paying down the house, building your own equity. It's, historically, the real estate's always appreciated over time. I expect that to fully be the case moving forward. And that's why I think now's a great time to buy. So you're going to be able to upgrade over time. You're going to be able to take that money and invest it. You may be able to keep that first home and keep it as a rental and move on and buy your second house. Lots of options, okay? Where you want to focus on, you want to focus on location. Okay, more of this criteria that you have and really makes your home buying, home search much simpler. Focus on location. Where do you want to be geographically? And if you have an idea for layout, that what you may need, I work with lots of people that say, I need a bungalow because we can't climb stairs, or we need a bungalow or or a 2-story. We have children. Whatever works best for us. And you want to know if you want to buy new or resale. That's helpful. There's lots of new home options right now. There's a lot of motivated new home buyers right now, by the way. And so that could be a great option for a lot of people. But knowing if you want to buy new, brand new, or buy resale, there's some great options there. And you want to have an idea of some of the other major amenities that you need. Do you need a garage? Do you need a large yard? Do you need to be near a certain trail network, or a certain public transit, near your work? Whatever you need. These are some of the larger items that we talk about and we have a dialogue about, so I can better understand that. Now, when you find a house, that you like, then this is when we can start to make offers on houses. And conditions and offers are normal again. Just a few years ago during COVID, they weren't the norm, they weren't common. Many buyers bought homes without any conditions, just unconditional, sign it off and go. But conditions are normal again. So now we can include conditions, conditional upon house inspection, conditional upon financing, or any other conditions that may come up. I always highly recommend that buyers do inspections on homes because they protect you. It gives you that extra insight into a home, to know what you're getting into, know what some of the issues are, and it's a great investment. It's a great investment. I have a couple awesome home inspectors that I personally use, and I always recommend. I know they do great jobs for my clients, but they really help you out. It's a really, really inexpensive fee to have some good insight into the home. Okay. And guess what? When you make offers, sometimes you're rejected. And that's part of the process. Don't take it personally. Whenever I get buyers to make offers or recommend they make offers, I always like to say to them, we're not here to offend them. That's not our goal. And if they come back with a different price or different conditions, don't feel offended. Rejections are part of the process. So don't take it personally. This is part of the process of what we work through. And, we do have to take some of that emotional side and just set that aside as we're dealing with this and look at this very objectively. And just know that, fear does fade. The more comfortable you become with it, the more offers you make, the more conversations you have. And that's how I always view offers is, hey, let's just start a conversation with someone. Maybe it's the house been sitting on the market for a while and we can give them an offer. They don't have to like it. They don't have to take it. But let's start the conversation. Let's just see where they're at. Let's see if they're willing to have that conversation with us. And I'm here to give you as much information as possible. I'm here to answer as many questions as you have. And that way I want to go ahead and make you confident and give you that confidence that you need to make your decision, whether you should buy or you should rent or you should jump in the market, what you should do, okay? Because I know for me, the more information I have, the better. Now, once again, over-information can add to your confusion. Try and get every question answered before you make a decision. Once again, not what I recommend. But I think if you can get most of the questions answered to make yourself feel comfortable, to get along the right path, I think that's where you need to be. And of course, when you're out making offers, your first offer is usually the hardest to make. You've never done this before. You've never had to make an offer. But you make an offer and with some strategy to it in terms of price, and just see what the seller has to say. And that's the hardest one because it's real. It's in front of you. You're signing off. There's a big number there. And I get it. I've been there a lot and I get it. So I never discount that. And I know how difficult that can be. And the thing is that, working with a lot of first-time home buyers, I do deal with a lot of nervous buyers, nervous first-time buyers. And I actually just helped some first-time buyers just buy their first house. It was a pretty nervous, nerve-wracking time for them. It was a young family. They were currently renting. They could see that they're just spending a lot of money on rent. They weren't getting any value for it. And it was time. They wanted to have a house of their own, and they wanted to build their own equity and wanted to have a place that their kids and their family could call their own. And so they knew they weren't ready, but we looked, we started searching. I answered lots of questions, as lots of first-time buyers do. And, the family with two young kids, they bought responsibly, bought in a great location here in Brantford, by the way. And, when we're touching base here, they have zero regret. They love it. They just recently moved in here in the fall, and it's been a great decision for them. And I'm excited to see them grow. I'm excited to see them get into it and really jump through this and really, really enjoy it. So once again, DM me, buyer below. I'll walk you through this step by step. I'll answer all the questions that you have and hopefully satisfy everything. And we won't leave any stone unturned. Okay? DM me any questions along with that. So let's just jump into our Q&A. Let's answer some questions that buyers have been sending me here and we've been talking about buying. So a lot of home buyers ask, how much do I really need saved in order to buy? Well, once again, I mentioned to you, only need minimum, ideally 5%. And that money can be gifted from someone. It can be given to you with no strings attached. It has to be an actual gift. It cannot be a loan. Someone can give you that down payment to get you in. Sometimes some people, depending on your credit, you might need a bit more down. You might need 10% down. Well, someone can give you 5% and you can have 5%. So there's a couple ways to do it. So if you have access to 5%, that will solve a lot of the problems there. What credit score, some people ask me, what credit score is good enough? Well, ideally, if you can get over 650 on your credit score, your beacon score, if you can get above that, then I can get you into pretty well any mortgage that you'd like with any lender and with any broker. If it's less than that, then we're going to have to be a bit more selective oftentimes. Or sometimes if you're there and you say, hey, Adam, I'm self-employed. I can't get a mortgage. That's not true. I can get you a mortgage. Okay. There are lenders out there that love self-employed people and the rates are great. So even if you're self-employed, that's not a problem. I can get you to a good mortgage and get you into a house. That's not a problem. Sometimes people ask me, or I hear lots of comments. People say, is now a bad time to buy? They'll ask me, is now a bad time to buy? And so for me, once again, I tell people, I think now is a great time to buy. It's an awesome time. We haven't seen lower prices like this in a number of years. The prices have settled. And based on my examples here that I've mentioned, the rent is almost approximately where the average mortgage is going to be for the average buyer. And we all know that if you're renting a house and a larger house, your rent is well over $3,000 a month. So I'm just using averages. But of course, as the prices have settled, that $600,000 house that I used in my example, that's giving you a lot more house than, say, I think that $2,209 worth of rent gets you. So that's where my averages and my numbers here. It's more difficult for me to paint this picture for you, but what you get. So this is where we have to jump into it and kind of look at what your options are. But I think we're at that tipping point right now where it does make a lot of sense, in my opinion, to buy right now. So there's less competition. The prices have come down a lot. It's a great opportunity. A lot of buyers I know are afraid of, and they would say, well, what if I make a mistake? And that's true. I mean, what if you make a mistake? Well, you can't let that hold you back in life. You can't let that hold you back about getting married. You can't let that hold you back about, having kids or changing jobs or getting into a career. You can't let that hold you back. You have to do it. And then there's only one way to find out. So for me, my life has been blessed immeasurably by purchasing and owning real estate. So that's what I recommend. I don't think it's a mistake. I think that you're going to understand and you'll know how great it is. And you're going to see how much that's going to bless you and your family down the road. So I think that purchasing now is an awesome time to do it. And I think you'll find in the short term, it's certainly not a mistake. And if you want to sit down and get together, I'll map out your plan with you. And I think we can paint the picture together and see what that really looks like for you. And then you can decide if it's going to be a mistake for you or not. You can weigh all your options. And of course, the most common question I get right now is, should I wait for prices to drop? Well, one thing I always tell the clients that I work with is that my crystal ball is broken. And I've never been good at timing the market. So don't try to time the market. If you have a crystal ball that works, great. Let me know. I could use it. I like to borrow it for a bit. But I think with the data that I'm looking at, and I pay close attention to this, the data that I'm looking at and where I see the market at and I see interest rates at, I think now is the time to buy. Where the interest rates are, where the prices are, I think this is a great time. And where I know that these rents are when I research it. So I think now is a great time to buy. I don't think you need to wait for prices to drop. And I don't think they're going to drop. I don't. I think I've mentioned in some of my previous episodes, if you check that out, I think the houses where the prices are dropping and always will drop in any market compared to the average price. And that is houses that are not in good condition. They're in poor condition. They will always sell for a discount, obviously. So just know that that's what that is. And I think prices are a great bargain right now. So thank you so much for that. Any questions you have, please, once again, comment below, drop your questions below. I'd love to be able to hear from you. I'd love to be able to get your questions answered in further episodes. You can also text me, of course, anytime, 226-400-7322. Love to connect. Love to answer your questions. So, all right. Something I'd like to talk to you about today, of course, is a great organization right here in our Brantford community that is nearest and dearest to my heart, and that is the Brantford Blessing Center. And if you don't know what the Brantford Blessing Center is, but that is an organization here in town, and they feed people that can't feed themselves. On average, they make meals every single day, and on average, they serve about 150 families. They serve 150 meals per day. They do wonderful work here, much needed work, as many people understand, and I always support them every single year for the Christmas events and events throughout the year. I'd love to be able to provide my support, which is funded from every sale that I make, to go ahead and to make sure that their organization thrives and their organization grows over time. So that's the Brantford Blessing Center. You can check more of them out online and text me or message me below, and I'd love to get you some information about them in greater detail in terms of what they do. So awesome opportunity, awesome organization. So once again, thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining me here. And when you're going to purchase a house, you don't need to know everything before you make a decision. This is part of the journey. This is part of the plan. This is part of the process as we start to look and ask questions and investigate to see if it makes sense for you. And you don't need to rush. You're not on a strict timeline. I don't think that you have to buy by a certain date. Otherwise, you can never buy again. I don't think that's the case. So there's no rush. But I do think that you need a plan. I do think that you need to know where you are and where you need to be. Okay, that's just a simple plan. And I'm here to help you with that. I'll help you find out where you are and where you need to be to get where you want to go. And that's essential to what we're doing. So DM buyer below, and I'll send you out my first-time buyer kit for free. Of course, there's no pressure, just clarity, and help you along the process and help you bring some light to some of those answers. Okay. Thank you so much for joining. I appreciate it. Join me next week for the next event and next podcast and video cast here. And please share, subscribe, replay, ask me questions. I look forward to hearing from you, and we will talk soon. Thank you so much for watching Ask the Marshal Live, my weekly live stream where I answer your questions and give you the real truths and the actual facts of what's happening here in the Brantford, Brant County, and Norfolk area markets. So please like, share, and subscribe, and we'll talk soon.